comforting and comfortable way of life.
Main Street anchors historic downtown Durant, occupying about a 9-block area. It's replete with locally owned shops and a burgeoning number of spots for dining and entertainment. This monument to the area's peanut growing industry, what's claimed to be the world's largest peanut, sits in front of City Hall. It's just one of the many colorful and engaging
It's 5:31. We'll call the meeting to order. If you would do invocation and flag salute, please.
Let us go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we ask that you be with us today as we make important decisions about the future of our city, our residents, and our community. We ask that you give us your grace and your guidance to make those decisions by your will and in the best interest of all concerned. Amen.
Would you please stand for the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both. Appreciate it. Roll call, please.
Drew Jackson,
Here.
Shane Knight,
Here.
Clint Horner, Whitney Kerr, Thomas Newsom.
Here.
First order of business is under consent items is consider approval of regular meeting minutes of September 6th.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, call for vote, please.
Drew Jackson,
Aye.
Shane Knight,
Aye.
Thomas Newsom.
Aye.
Next order of business under public hearings is discussion, consideration, and possible action on PC 2022-23, a final plat, request for property located near South 9th Avenue and Rodeo Road. Ms. O'Neill.
The applicant called yesterday, I believe it was, and asked for this item to be tabled due to some title abstract stuff that popped up late last week, and they would like to get that cleared up before they move forward on the plat. So they've asked for this item to be tabled.
Meaning that it'll come back next month. Are they prepared for that turnaround?
Yes, yes, they said they was hoping to have it cleared up by today, but it didn't happen yet, so.
Okay.
I assume that needs a motion?
Yes,
To
it will.
table?
Yep.
Do we have a motion?
I motion to, what's my first time?
Motion to table.
To table possible action on PC 2022-23, a final plat request for property located near South 3rd Avenue and Rodeo Road.
I second.
Motion and a second, call for a vote, please.
Drew Jackson,
Aye.
Shane Knight,
Aye.
Thomas Newsom.
Aye.
Excuse me. 5B is discussion, consideration, and possible action on PC 2022-24, a rezoning request from A1 General Agriculture to C2 Highway Commercial and Commercial Recreation for property located near Southeast 3rd Avenue and Rodeo Road. Ms. O'Neill.
So this property, the applicant came in wanting to do rezoning and platting kind of all together. So this is one case file. The next three items are one case file, but we separated them out due to the type of zoning that they were wanting to do, as well as the platting. The rezoning that they're wanting to do, the commercial piece is going to be fronting Southeast 3rd at the corner of 3rd and 9th. You'll see there on the map. The residential piece would be just to the west of that, facing Rodeo Road, and then the rest of that would remain as agriculture. They kind of have it divided up, or they do have it divided up, the 18 acres divided up on the plat to be where there's there's 3 2-acre lots that are as commercial, 5 1-acre lots that are single family residential, and approximately 7 acres that will remain as agricultural. The future land use map does have this area as commercial, so part of this is in line with the future land use map. One of the concerns that staff has on the rezoning side of it was the commercial, with the rezoning, it could potentially be considered a spot zoning because of most of this is ag zoning in this area. And then the other side of the line is out in the county, so they obviously do not have any zoning. On the plat side of it, I'll kind of jump to that real quick. Staff did sign off on the plat, and there wasn't any issues that was noted on the plat. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I figured I'd go in depth on everything here, and then we'd take each one piece by piece. If you have any questions, the applicant's also here. If you have any questions, we have some public too that may have some comments too.
I probably have a couple questions. Speaking to spot zoning, I certainly understand, going from ag to commercial, or really anything else could be considered spot zoning, but it really is, directly in line with future land use map that we have.
Correct.
So my assumption is that's going to eliminate the concern of spot zoning.
It could very well could, yes. Most of the research that I found did speak of where some of the factors to determine the reasonableness of spot zoning. One of that was the being in line with the comprehensive plan or your future land use map. Most of that pointed in that direction, but it also pointed to having a legal opinion from your city attorney as well. That I do not have. I reached out to him several times and haven't been able to hear anything back. So I don't have that to lean on at all, but the research that I did find said basically looking at the size of the area, relation to the comprehensive plan, which for the commercial piece is in line with the comprehensive plan, and then the degree of change in uses allowed, and the last one was relative harm and benefit to owners and neighbors and community. That was kind of the 4 areas and this came out of a planning commission handbook that was done. It's pretty dated, it's 2008. That was done by the American Planning Association Oklahoma chapter years ago. But anyways, so that was some stuff that was put together back then, which is still relatively relevant, obviously, but it's still a little dated as well. But everything else that was pointed out definitely pointed to what is in line with the comprehensive plan and things like that. The other thing to consider is this area is near the airport too. So anything that's done has to be approved through FAA, and he did go ahead and get the FAA clearance as well as for what he's planning to do. So that piece.
Remind me, is that a 10-mile?
Well, basically what we do is anything that is south of Maine and east of 9th, I believe, is our area that we tell anybody that is developing that they have to go and talk to FAA. And that's kind of our area that we tell them that if it fits reasonably close to the airport.
The question was more of a refresher from my application.
No,
so
you're right.
I can look that up at a later.
I talked to Michael Mitchell, which is our representative who helps with the airport out there, and I talked to him a lot, and I'm like, okay, so you tell me what area I need to look at, and he's my airport guy.
I guess to point out something to the other commissioners, I think what Ms. O'Neill is suggesting is that we discuss 5B, C, and D together. So whatever questions that we have on those, we'll run together, and then we can make motions separately. But again, back to the spot zoning, I assume that the spot zoning, the consideration is only for the commercial aspect, not the residential. Is that?
Yeah, it could be, and on the other side of it, whenever you look at it from going to ag to residential, that's kind of your natural progression as well. So I don't know that I have a huge concern on that necessarily. It would be considered spot zoning, obviously, because there isn't any surrounding residential pieces. There's areas over there that is R1 that's across some cemetery road that is R1 over there. So I don't know that I'm necessarily worried about the residential piece because that's kind of your natural progression. If you're going to go from ag, you're stepping up to residential, and on top of that, you're having that area where he's kind of keeping that ag piece behind it as a buffer to the rest of the area, which is kind of nice. Now, yes, that could change down the road, but if that does, then that'll obviously have to come back before the committee and all that. So.
I do have some other questions, but I thought I'd take a pause and see if either of you two want to jump in on this aspect of it?
I don't think I have anything in terms of the spot zoning. I agree with the question. I did have that question when I was reviewing this, but I don't have anything to add to that. I think, thinking of it from a planning standpoint, it is the natural progression for things that are currently zoned one way to eventually become zoned another in accordance with the growth plan of the city. That growth plan is obviously commercial along Highway 78 or Southeast 3rd, whatever it's listed on the application. So I can understand that concern of it being spot zoning, but I think we're going to run into that more and more as Durant continues to grow, in an effort to become more in line with the future use. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Either of you have any other questions? So in regard to the residential aspect, some of the complaints that we've heard from this area in the past, obviously traffic has always been one of them. And I guess I'm asking, a real question, one I don't have the answer to, but, at what point is the city going to consider this a major development that's going to require the other aspects, that we're requiring from developers, meaning the sidewalks, the streetlights, dedicated roads, et cetera, versus, stacked up on rodeo. My concern about the 5 that we have here is that we're getting into that territory of a major development. Also, I can ask the applicant, but, curious what the other, agricultural portion is. But these 5 are going to have driveways all on rodeo versus 2 entrances for the whole. So curious if the city has any language that speaks to what will be required and at what point that becomes a major development.
So the way the ordinance reads now, as far as within the subdivision ordinance, for a final plat, if it's filed as a final plat, then they have to have streetlights and sidewalks and all that. So this development will have to have the sidewalks, streetlights, and just like that, just with anything else. The ones that we've had and recently have been our normal subdivisions, like you would expect, your normal single-family lots and your normal those type of things. This is a little different in the fact that this is fronting an existing roadway. A lot that we normally see recently have not been facing a roadway. So as far as when they expect rodeo to be improved or anything like that, that's definitely not in my wheelhouse, and I don't have any idea when that time will come. I know they're working on putting together some sort of capital improvement plan as far as when roads will be upgraded or improved and things like that. So I know they're starting that process out at Public Works, but I don't have any clue as far as where this road would stand in their queue.
So in previous discussion, you and I talked about our ordinances do define the difference between a minor plat and major plat. Language is more than 4 lots constitutes a major plat. So just kind of want to make that distinction as we discuss the lots, residential lots.
Yeah, that's correct.
Anything else?
Yes, along those lines. I know we're kind of combining all 3 of these pieces into one discussion. So I take issue, actually I agree with what Drew is saying, and I take issue with just dividing up the roadway and creating 5, 6, 7 new driveways all within this short span. And you alluded to it coming to a final plat, it being a subdivision. I can't find in our ordinances what constitutes a subdivision versus just dividing a piece of land. I think with taking one piece of land and making it into 7, 8 properties constitutes what I would consider, in my opinion, from reading our ordinances, a subdivision. And so with that, I'm curious as to why, and we saw it in an earlier application that was tabled, but that subdivision, on a bigger scale, obviously, sort of, 25 acres versus 18 acres, not that big of a difference, but they brought forth a preliminary plat for us to review and get acknowledged, which kind of gave them that step forward to move with their project. And then they brought a final plat to us tonight, which we ended up tabling, but the final plat requirements state all the things they have to have, the as-built of the city improvements, which I think in this application, it says there's city services there, and that those improvements will have to be coordinated with the city for this subdivision. So should we even be seeing a final plat right now with this being, there's no
For this, they
services?
they don't need any services. So
they don't need any
excuse me.
services.
So for this one, no public roads are needed. He's not putting down any public roads. He's not putting any public water or sewer lines. Any lines that's going to it will be just a tap to.
Okay, so there's sewer
taps to
along
the.
Rodeo.
Yeah, there's going to be water sewer lines in that area that'll work.
No, there's not.
We'll have a moment for public discussion.
Yes.
Thank you.
And our public works crews will know where all that's at, and have talked with the applicant as far as how that's going to work as far as water, sewer, and all that, and the applicant's well aware of how that's going to work. And with the residential, as I recall, I believe that is going to be aerobic or some sort of system. I believe there isn't anything along Rodeo, but I believe there is on Southeast 3rd.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. O'Neill? Would the applicant like to speak? I'm sure we do. If you would state your name for the record, please. Thanks.
I'm Danny Corey.
Thank you. Do you want to continue with the
So
line?
is there's sewer or no sewer,
So-
city sewer along Rodeo?
No, there is no sewer in the entire area there. So,
okay.
Yes, there is a water line facing the property. It's a 6-inch, and there is enough capacity. We checked with the city for the capacity. We just need to tie into it and put meters. For the sewer, it's going to be aerobic system on each lot. I just want to say something. I mean, as you know, people put like half-acre lots on a septic on this system. They can put half-acre lot, and I could have request like probably 20 lots on this property plus the commercial, but I did at the least damage I can to the area, so I only requested 5 1-acre lots. For your question, the agriculture, I'm gonna keep this for myself. I'm gonna just make it small farm. For the commercial, the plan is I'm gonna build a gas station on it. So that's the plan. No one knows what's gonna happen in the future. So there's no gas station in the entire area. There's no store in the entire area. You need something, you're gonna have to drive all the way to, inside Durant on Main Street to get something. Yeah, for the houses, I'm planning to put some nice houses in the area. Probably gonna make the area look nicer. Like we're not just gonna come put whatever. I'm planning to put some cinder block houses, not just that wood, the typical wood they put, so you don't have to worry about the tornadoes or anything. We kept a lot of all this agriculture. It's between any residential or the neighbors. So we have a big buffer area. And on the highway, I don't think of any other thing than commercial that will go on the highway. No one want to live there. All this traffic, you know what I mean? So.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against? If you would, please come.
I'll go first, and then y'all can fill in my blanks. Thank you very much.
If you would-
Heather Dobbins.
Thank you.
I live on the Boot Hill Ranch, Highway 78 and Rodeo Road on the corner. We do have a store 2 miles to the south of us that is a gas station that has everything you could ever need. I've lived here 40 years. And this has been my biggest fear, is that something like this would happen and somebody come in and say, oh, we're going to make the place look nicer. Okay? We have horses. We have cattle. We have goats. I have an arena on my place. That's going to interfere with what's across the street. And I know these people have lived here a long time as well. There have been 14 wrecks on that corner since my father started counting in 1985. If you're going to put sidewalks, I'm sorry, I'm switching gears now. Sorry, I'm just thinking. If you're going to put sidewalks over here on, why are we not working about those in the city? We got people walking in the roads. We've got people riding bicycles in the roads. I know city needs to grow, but right across the street, my Aunt Elvie lives here. She's in the city. I'm not in the city. And I feel like this is awful close to me, and I'm against it. Sorry, I got emotional.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
I'm Sandra Levins. We live across the street from this. I'm concerned about the aerobic systems. There is a railroad that runs through this property and then goes across the street to ours. I happen to know that the house in front of us had to build a pond for their septic system because it would not perk. If he puts aerobic systems on there and the land doesn't perk, when it rains, it's all going to go down there and across the road into our pastures. And frankly, that's dangerous. My brother was in the septic system business for years, and he told me, he said, aerobic systems do have big problems. If the land doesn't absorb it fast enough, there is a lot of runoff. And I'm concerned about the runoff from the aerobic systems getting into my pasture where I have horses and that kind of thing. Plus the fact that Rodeo Road already is a major, it's just a wreck waiting to happen. People say, why don't you let your horses out in the large pasture? Why do you keep them in the pens? If anything gets on Rodeo Road, it's flattened within 5 minutes. Because there's, right in front of our gate, there's a big spot that the city or someone repairs, every few months because it comes back out and it's dangerous. And so that's our thing. The traffic up on the corner that he's talking about, a gas station, probably wouldn't affect us, but I'm more worried about the bacteria and germs from the aerobic systems running down into what used to be the old railroad bed, which you can't build anything on because it's not your property, it's the railroad's property. So all of that is just going to go across and all over our pasture land. So that's my big concern.
Ms.
And
Levins?
the traffic it's going to create.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's quite all right.
You talked about a railroad. Where on this property is the railroad?
Oh, let's see. Well.
Do we have a map on the screen? Oh, sure. Like more of a satellite image?
Bring up that other one you had. Stop right
Okay,
there.
right there, okay. This is our place, and you see, okay, where the two plats go, between the two yellow lines, and it continues all the way across our pasture on past, that is the old railroad. We had to have.
I'm not sure I was clear on which one was yours.
Good,
Okay.
very. Take that corner and go to my left.
To the left.
See if we can't direct his cursor on your.
Left.
This one right here is ours.
Keep going. Yeah,
Right there.
Okay, thank you.
Right,
You see
right
those
there.
lines?
Yeah.
We own that whole 60 acres.
And the railroad from there, from his cursor, is where?
Right above your cursor,
Right, that
between
line.
the two yellow lines,
Good.
right over, yeah,
Right there.
Right there.
That is
that
the
line?
railroad.
Okay.
And it goes all the way across our land. And, so you can't do anything with that because we don't own it. The railroad owns it. And it was a huge ditch when we bought the place and we've had it filled in, but it's still a low spot. And that's where the water drains and then drains on out into our pasture and everybody else's. I mean, that's a low spot right there. So that's a big concern. As a matter of fact, we've had our fence wiped out twice, I think, from kids as they hit that water when it's raining real hard and hydroplane, and they've taken our fence out because it is a dangerous spot. Any other questions?
Thanks, that's helpful.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Ma'am?
The lady that spoke before, your property is the one on the southeast corner?
Yes. And my Aunt Elvie
Right there.
and Uncle Merle
Right
have
there.
right across the highway from me as well, which will be just to the south of this new development.
Okay, her place
Is this your property here?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And then my Aunt Elvie has the right across the highway right there, which will be right next to that as well. They're in Poto, or they would be here.
It's a very dangerous intersection also.
That's it.
yes, they're having that.
14 since Dad started counting in 1985, 14 deaths.
We would have to have a red light there if they did.
Yeah, and that's right in my front
Yeah.
door.
Yeah.
I'm not in city limits either.
And see, we are.
You are, because Elvie is on her side of the road, but I'm not.
Yeah, I know. Wish we was there.
They're gonna be out if this gets here.
We woke up one morning within city limits.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to be in cities.
Somebody opened my gate last night, let my horses out, and they were on the highway.
I have a question, I think, for for Danny, the owner. The commercial plats that you show, or the commercial lots that you show along Highway 78, will you be able to gain access from Highway 78 into those?
Yes,
Or-
and it's probably gonna be one driveway.
Okay,
Yes, because we're gonna just get one driveway to the parking lot and then they will go.
yes,
Yeah.
okay.
And I want to add something, the ODOT already have plan to widening that highway. And I already designed, we already built it for City of Durant. We relocated the force main line, the 16-inch force main line. So they're ready to start like very soon on that road.
It should be noted that he will not be able to build across the lot lines.
Oh, yeah.
So just making that note.
That's actually where my question was heading, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So you have 3 commercial lots.
Yes.
Were all 3 lots dedicated to the gas station, or was there future plans of?
I might
Who
take
knows?
2 lots for a gas station and maybe like a car wash or something on the 3rd lot. I don't know yet. I just want to see if it's gonna get rezoned and then I can start planning, Yeah.
Did you have any questions for him? said that since there's no sewer in the area at all, I assume that's for the commercial lots as well. Were you?
Correct.
So the aerobic will be on commercial as well?
Yes, we're gonna do study and see how big of a building can put, and we're gonna leave area for detention, storm detention, and area for aerobic system. So the building itself won't be that big because I'm gonna have to have parking, the storm detention, all this stuff.
This might be something you can answer, it might not, but if you try, I'd appreciate it. So on the commercial, how does one judge, what the aerobic has to, maintain? Obviously it's the amount of traffic that you have, but is it based on square foot, or how is that determined?
It is based on the building type and how many restroom you have in it. And so the MEP engineer, mechanical, electric, plumbing engineer, it will give you the flow of the building, and based on that flow, basically you give it to a professional person that can design how big is the tank, what's the pump, how many sprayer, what's the area it need to be sprayed. We're gonna do a soil test, and based on that soil report, we will decide what's the area required for that aerobic system.
Do we know that the 6 acres would be sufficient?
The 7.4 acre?
Is that
I'm sorry, you're talking about the commercial. Sorry. Yes, it would be. Yeah, I did quick calculation before I designed this, so yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Have you discussed this with DEQ?
Not yet, because I have no water line or nothing.
Okay.
It's existing water line, so I'm not doing any extensions.
Okay, I just want
Yes.
to see if you got any advice from DEQ on that, what they might have said.
Yeah, well, I have a previous,
Right.
I discussed it with them previously. I know what their answer gonna be.
Okay.
If it was designed by someone, they're fine with it. Yes. And they ODEQ only look at the lot size. Is it more than half acre? Okay, it is. So you can have aerobic on it. That's the only thing they look at. And, yeah.
Anyone else for the applicant?
I don't think so. Or I don't, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, if you would come to the stand, please.
It used to be that you had to have 5 acres for a septic field on a lot. Is that not the rule now?
No, ma'am, it's not.
So they expect the aerobic systems, what is the lot size for an aerobic system?
DEQ's regulation for an aerobic system is a half-acre minimum.
A half-acre minimum?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And unless I'm mistaken, the aerobic system is probably not in the purview of this commission. Might be an issue that you could bring up to council, but it's not part of the zoning process.
And with the aerobic system, city staff doesn't even approve it. It's not even, we just send it to DEQ for DEQ approval. We don't even look at them.
So there'll be a study, that's done, as you said earlier, to see if it perks. Those standards are not set by this commission or city council. So obviously consideration as part of the development and neighbors, but it's probably not in the purview of the commission. Is there, for Mr. Horner's sake, some of the things that we had discussed already was is this an issue of spot zoning? It does fit within the future land use map, but it is a significant difference from the agriculture that exists. The use on the commercial was going to be a gas station, 5 residential lots facing rodeo, all drives on Rodeo Road. The applicant's not requesting any additional services from the city. Sewer, obviously, we've discussed. Water will be a private line, and drives, obviously, a private line. So that's the reason for a final plat. Any discussion? Not all at once. I'd say I do, just my personal opinion is I do have some concern, about the residential aspect, simply because, we have in our ordinances that 4 lots constitutes a major plat. And so I'm wondering if having a major plat just lined up along Rodeo Road that we've already had issues and complaints on is the right approach. I don't necessarily have issue with the overall goals of the applicant, and I certainly think that, each owner should be able to pursue the best use of the land that they own. But I do have some question about the approach. And again, is the city ready for C2? Danielle, I think I do have a question for you. So now that we know what the intended use is, being a gas station, do we know what how that use is labeled in our ordinance? I looked earlier and I thought automotive service might have been the closest, but to me, I think of like mechanic shop when I think of that rather than a gas station.
Let me look real quick while we're.
I just want to make sure that we have an appropriate zoning.
Probably automotive service is probably pretty close. I'll look through and see if there's another one that's probably closer, but an automotive service is allowed in C3, C2, and C1.
It is in C1?
Yes, C1, C2, and C3. So for this,
Okay.
for the, let me look and see if there's another one too.
I don't mean to interrupt, but
No, you're
I'm
good.
going to. I think I'm in agreement with what you're saying, Drew. I mean, the commercial lots along Highway 78, I think, is going to be the natural progression as the city grows. That road is going to continue to be developed, and commercial access off of that highway seems to be a logical progression to me. Of all things, I'm having heartburn over the residential lots as well. I feel like we're, I don't want to use the word skirting the rules because I know that's not Danny's intent, but I feel like we're creating a subdivision and not necessarily going through all the subdivision requirements. And I'm not sure how that plays out in accordance with our ordinances. That's just what's coming to mind as I've been looking at this for a week and can't get that piece of it settled. So I don't know. That's just 2 cents for everybody to chew on for a minute, I guess.
I did find where in the ordinances we have what's called a convenience store, which would most likely fit what would be.
And where is that?
Convenience store is allowed in C1, C2, C3, and CBD.
Okay, thank you.
And CBD is Central Business District. Just clarification.
So Shane, going back to your comment, is the way that I hear your concern is more with the plat than necessarily the zoning? Did I?
Yeah, I think, I'll lay my opinions on the table. I feel comfortable in thinking about the progression of the city of Durant and in thinking about how this even in our future use map, is laid out to be a commercial corridor along Highway 78. And we've got low-density residential kind of slated for between Highway 78 and South 9th, all the way over to Choctaw. We've got low-density residential kind of scheduled into all of that area, and ag, of course. Yeah, I actually feel comfortable with the zoning request. I just don't feel comfortable with the plating.
Any comments before we go?
Oh, I agree with the subdivision part. I don't necessarily disagree with what he's trying to do there. Just like you said, the subdivision. Was there a feasibility study done on that project? I'm just curious if no, okay. Are you planning on selling that? Is that what you're doing, developing it to sell?
I'm gonna build it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me make sure I'm understanding what we've got on this. We've got 3 different.
And we're having conversations about the 3 different ones.
We're having conversations
Yes.
about all of them. I
And we
understand
can
that.
separate them out 3 different
Yeah.
cases, yes.
So we've got 3 different cases: a commercial rezoning case, a residential rezoning case, and then a final plat case.
Correct. Yep,
Okay.
you nailed it.
Since y'all want us to have a chance to speak, would it be?
Microphone's on.
Sorry about that, guys. Since we've had a discussion, if it suits you guys, maybe we'll go back to visiting about them individually. So we'll take 5B, have a discussion about that, and to follow a motion, and then move forward with the discussion on C. Is that
Yes.
okay? Any further discussion on? Oh, I'm sorry. I think the applicant had a.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
So the other option would be on Rodeo Road, right? If y'all don't like those 5 driveways, I'm gonna put a road inside the subdivision with 18 lots, with 1 single access to Rodeo. So that is the least amount of damage I could cause the entire area. If I'm gonna build a road, if I did less than 18 lot, there is no way financially this is gonna work out. You know what I mean? Like the cost
Yeah,
would
you're
be.
saying in order to put a road in, you'd need to.
I need
more
18
lots.
lots.
Yeah.
18 lots, half-acre lots, and that would be probably, like 5 times damage to the area than what I'm suggesting. So,
Yeah.
yes.
So I guess to be determined whether it would be 1 access or 2, though, right?
Per the fire code, there has to be 2 ways in and out.
Yeah.
So there cannot be 1 way in, 1 way out. That's per fire code.
Yes, for the 2 axes, it's gonna have access from the highway and 1 access from Rodeo Road. So, and I can put 18 lot that way.
You're saying the residential would have access to the highway?
Yes. We will have easement in between the commercial, and we'll get access. But instead of looking at 8 lots, you would be looking at 21 lots. So I'm just putting that there, because if that got rejected, I'm gonna come back with that one.
Sure.
Okay.
I think expected.
5 houses, you would have 18 houses on there.
Decrease in property.
So 5B is consideration of the rezoning to C2.
Hey, Danielle, I've got a question for you. Those plats around this, are they all zoned ag?
Yes, everything is zoned ag. That's on this, well, everything is zoned ag in that area, yes.
Okay.
And can you go up one more, or down one more map?
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yep, no, you're good.
I should have scrolled down
That
myself.
tan area is the only area that's zoned as R1.
I gotcha, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could we also put up the future land use map again, please? I think it's page 43. Yeah, thanks. So when the city went, yeah, thanks. the city went through planning there in red was deemed most likely to be commercial. The yellow would be low residential, low density residential.
Danielle, I should have known this before I came in here, but does city limits end at Rodeo Road?
We go south a little bit. If you go back to that zoning map, go down one more map, Byron. Go to the zoning map. So on that, everything in white is in the county. So rodeo going east is everything is in the county. If it's going south, you're still in the city.
Okay.
The future land use map has, we always did, if you remember when we did that, we included a 3-mile buffer around around the city just in case we did any annexation
that's
or
what I was thinking when
future.
I was looking at that was I knew the and another, I think you know this pet peeve of mine, but put a north arrow on all the maps so that I know what direction. But,
yeah, sorry, that was my fault.
So to the anyway, I knew everything to the east, I think.
Yes, everything to the east, outside city limits. Yes.
North is up.
I just didn't know
Yep, to the south, we're
how
still.
far south it went. And I knew that we had done the buffer, which was what all the colors were for, but
Yep.
This is probably, I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole here, but being new to the commission, are there any city plans for the bridge at Rodeo Road and 9th?
For the
hump bridge?
Not at this point in time. There was years ago, to my understanding, and
That
there
was
was.
a railroad-owned bridge is why the city didn't do it from what I recall.
Well, at this point in time, no one's claiming ownership of it, to be honest with you. We went through this not very long ago, and apparently no one's claiming ownership of it. And I don't know what the status as far as being able to work on that, but trying to work with railroad can be complicated. They are working on moving some roadway down on Waldron Road in that area. But as far as the bridge, to my knowledge, they haven't done anything with that to this point. In the future, I know there's conversation about it, but I think we're going to have it's going to be a whole other chapter.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
yeah, it's all going to come that way. So let me ask this question, maybe to you or maybe to the owner. If there's any part of one of these 3 items tonight that is approved or denied, is that going to void the plans that you have? So we could be seeing a whole nother set of plans for this 18 acres in the next few months if all 3 of these aren't approved, essentially.
Right, yeah, because
Yeah.
if we don't approve, let's say, I'm going to give a hypothetical, okay?
Sure.
If we don't approve the commercial, then the plat will have to be changed because it clearly calls out the commercial.
Right.
And then the same thing with the residential. Now, we could go in there and obviously with the recommending body, council could ultimately do and change something else. And so we could go in and make a few changes on there probably. But if ultimately the whole thing doesn't get approved or bits and pieces get approved, then that could change how we have to handle it. And I won't speak for the owner on on what it'll change for him, but
Sure.
but I'll let him speak as far as I see him nodding his head, so.
Yeah, I was looking at that. Yeah, I think that's the case as well. I mean, I think we've brought up the topic of discussion a couple of times with, and I think it was even mentioned when we first started talking about this tonight, that, we do see, going from agricultural land within city limits to a low-density residential R1 as kind of a natural progression for development.
Right.
So, looking at it from that standpoint on this west side of the commercial, I see the R1 as a natural progression from the agricultural zone. I think 5 1-acre tracts sounds a lot better for that area than 18 half-acre tracts. Thinking if I lived or my family lived in that area, I see, I'm just laying all my cards on the table here for y'all to understand probably the way I'm gonna vote on this, but I see C2 or commercial, whether it's C2 or C1, being along Highway 78, whether that's now or next year or 5 years from now. So anyway, I don't know if that moved us any further down this road or not, but.
And I have a question. So we talked about the number of lots.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen any language talking about the density?
No, not
determining
that
whether
I've,
that's a development or not?
not that
I mean,
I'm recalling.
obviously, the applicant's intent is to keep density down.
Right, right.
Or that's what I understand him, his desire there,
Right.
for the area. And, I think it's commendable, especially considering, some of the complaints that we've had, from local residents. I'm just curious if you've ever seen any language about density playing a role in that definition.
Not in as far as subdivision or plating side of it. I've not seen anything in that. And then in the piece of paper, there's the definition of subdivision that's up there for you. So I meant to mention that earlier. But there hasn't really been mentioned as far as the number of as far as the density. The density is typically brought up when you're looking at zoning. So that's why we have like the R1, R2, R3 when it comes to the residential side. And also the ordinances currently say that if you can have I get it wrong every time, but you can have a more restrictive use in a less restrictive zoning category, providing that it meets the more restrictive size dense, size and setbacks and all that. So we do have that in there too. So I mean, that's just, I'm just stating that just so it's stated, but it doesn't subdivision wise, no.
As a sidebar comment, I would love to see the city make an effort to further define what constitutes a development. And let's place, some rules around there. I find, that because of the lack of definition on this, it puts, I feel like, we're in a position of setting a precedence, and what may work on rodeo might not work in another area and vice versa. And so it's not the request that I struggle with as much as I do setting a precedence of how we're going to view something like this. Right. We have language in the ordinance that says 4 lots is a major plat. If it's a major plat, we ought to have a preliminary and all the other things that go with it. Yet I understand, the applicant's, attempt here, and I don't fault them for that either. So it's hard not to set a precedent. So I'd love to see us do some work on further defining what that means.
And as you may recall, we are currently working on Title 15, which is going to completely rewrite and redo all of land use ordinances, which includes subdivision. So I'm sure we'll have.
And how far out are we on that?
Probably about a year. I'm getting a status update this week.
Okay.
So I'll have more later.
Thanks.
I keep going back to that too, major and minor subdivision, and setting of a precedent. I don't know that I have an issue in looking at this, and then after discussing it with these folks tonight, that I don't think there's an issue with the proposed zoning, maybe not even an issue with the proposed plat. But I think in accordance with our ordinances that this plat should go through preliminary and final.
Okay, and we can certainly make that a stipulation as far as, but the question is typically when people go through a preliminary plat, they have something that they have to get done before they come to final plat. So like infrastructure or, or something like that. So there's nothing stopping him from doing a preliminary plat 1 month and then the very next month doing a final plat.
Because there are no additional services being provided.
Exactly.
If I may
Which is why
interject on that comment, I understand the request of this, there's not an additional request of the city,
Correct.
but we still have report to come back on whether the aerobic will work, et cetera. I mean,
And
assuming
again,
it would on an acre.
we don't
but-
look at that. DEQ signs off on the plat as
but
far as
I'm just talking in relation
but-
to signing on a final plat. We don't know that all the utilities are sufficient.
Well, and we won't, I mean, the thing is when it comes to the city, we don't look at anything on the aerobic side at all, on any development. If it's aerobic, the city, our public
Yeah,
works
I
crews don't
understand we
even look
don't.
at it.
I'm saying, should
Right.
we? Before we get to final.
If we do, then we probably need to address that in our ordinances somehow. But currently, there's nothing saying that's requiring us to look at aerobic at all. So, other than what state standards are.
Yeah,
Right.
I understand that. for
Yeah,
sure.
so I
Yeah,
mean, should there? I'm not the person to ask on that one. Maybe
yeah,
we
we
need
can't
to.
take that responsibility. I understand. I'm just-
Right.
I
and
was
it's-
I was wondering
right.
if we should address the ordinance to where if we are going to have a preliminary and final, we have those reports back before final. That was my question.
I mean, you could request that, I suppose.
I mean, I hope I hope I'm following your logic because I'm on the same page. It's not specifically for this, but if this was a longer plat and you could get 20 houses, 21 acre lots along Rodeo Road, I think we're setting a precedent for just because he doesn't need a road or
So what's the number?
sewer. I mean, what is the number that requires you to have to do some other things because it is such a big development? And I think the way I read it, it's the number's 4, or is it 4 or less? So,
The number is 4 or more.
4 or more, yeah.
So, and it states in there that a concept plan or preliminary site plan that contains sufficient information to provide for the proper coordination of the development may be required for non-residential property.
And I'm not saying that because I think it would. I don't think it would necessarily change the outcome of this specific incident, but I worry that a month from now we won't have somebody that comes with the same circumstance that's a much bigger impact that says, well, like you said, we've set a precedent.
Mhm.
So that's just my thoughts.
Is it possible to, from our seats, is it possible to approve this plat as a preliminary versus the final as it's submitted?
What would he come back for?
I think if you have to take that long, then it's probably the answer is
Right, and
Shane, just out of
and,
curiosity, what would he come back with for the final?
Using my example, it's in the same.
I think there's the potential that it could be the same. Yeah, I mean, Are we doubling the efforts for no reason?
I'm asking the question.
Or are we doubling the efforts because of precedent or because of ordinance? I mean, we're looking at the creation of 9 lots. And the ordinance clearly says more than 4 is considered a major subdivision. But like you said, there's nothing that has to change on this from preliminary to final.
That may be a question for the city attorney more than,
Using my example, if it was 20 1-acre lots in the same configuration, there'd still be nothing that would change for.
Yeah.
So are we overthinking this?
Yeah, probably.
is there any more discussion on the rezoning to commercial?
Is that what we're on?
Fi-
Are we on
5B.
Okay. No, not for me.
Is there a motion?
Is that the one you have up on the screen over there? The current item?
Yes.
I make a motion to approve PC 2022-24, rezoning from A1 agriculture to C2 highway commercial.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
Drew Jackson,
Aye.
Shane Knight,
Aye.
Thomas Newsom.
Aye.
Item 5C, discussion, consideration, possible action on PC 2022-24, a rezoning request from A1 general agriculture to R1 single-family residential for property located at Southeast 3rd Avenue and Rodeo Road. I believe we've had all this discussion we can handle. Is there any further discussion on the commission? We have a motion.
I make a motion to approve PC 2022-24, rezoning from A1 to R1 single-family residential.
Second.
Have a motion, a second. Call for a vote, please.
Drew Jackson,
Aye.
Shane Knight,
Aye.
Thomas Newsom.
Aye.
Motion passes. 5D, discussion, consideration, and possible action on PC 2022-24, a final plat request for property located near Southeast 3rd Avenue and Rodeo Road. Any discussion on 5D?
No.
All the discussion, right? I'll be honest, if you're laying your cards on the table, I'll do the same. I'm conflicted on this one, in the sense that I don't necessarily have an issue with this request. I have an issue with making a precedence. For instance, if, the example, if there were 21 in a row, that's adding a lot to rodeo. However, for this instance, this specific location, my opinion is, probably the 5 is more acceptable than the 18 to 20 or whatever it may possibly be. So there's an open conflict there for me. Again, I would, ask staff to make a official request that we address this, and how do we quickly define what adding a new subdivision is, so that we can have some guidance moving forward ahead of the year and a half that we expect for, again, asking for simple language changes.
Put that in the motion. Matter.
I don't know that it would be as part of a motion on 5D, but I think we can certainly start that discussion with staff.
I'll make the motion to approve PC 2022-24 final plat request for property located at Southeast 3rd Avenue and Rodeo Road. But I do agree with your request to the city to give us better understanding moving forward.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
Drew Jackson,
Aye.
Shane Knight,
Aye.
Thomas Newsom.
Aye.
I want to point something out to the folks in the audience, and I'm sure you're probably already aware that the Planning and Zoning Board is solely a recommending body. So the decision for this actually will happen by City Council at next week's City Council meeting. So I would suggest you show up at that meeting and voice your concerns as well, just so that those folks are aware.
I think thank you for bringing that up. I meant to earlier and forgot. I think the other thing to add is this commission is tasked with a much more narrow scope, than City Council is. There's certain things that we're supposed to be looking at, to make our decisions. Council can view, the whole. So, to Mr. Knott's standpoint, if you have concerns, certainly valid to bring those to them. I think the one thing that, certainly on the rezoning commercial, the city has already, determined that that's probably the best use moving down 78. So, there is going to be that to contend with. But I think that concludes the public hearing portion. Is there any new business?
Likewise, I echo the
I'm sorry.
comments of my colleagues about City Council.
Any new business? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, aye.